everyone, Luther here from YakAttack. Welcome to another edition of Rigging the Dream. What we're going to talk about today is using backing plates with the LeverLoc anchor trolley. So what we've got here, we've got a boat that we've already installed using the standard installation. We're going to show you how to go back, and whether you're doing it a fresh install or whether you're redoing an install because you want to add the backing plates, we'll show you both techniques, show you how to install the backing plates in a blind location, how to do them in a location that's easy to reach. So let's get started. Okay, so what we're going to be installing here is the backing plates from the HD kit. So we've got the AMS 1004 LeverLoc Anchor Trolley HD. Biggest difference between this one and the regular one is that in addition to the self-threading screws, we also have a number of machine screws. And then inside the parts kit, in addition to the same pulleys and line and everything that we have in the regular kit, we have a few extras. And let's take a look at what those are. We have 3 backing plates. We have 2 extra pad hooks. All of the rest of these components, with the exception of some hardware, would come with the regular kit as well. What we're going to focus on here is how to install these components, which are exclusive to the HD kit. Okay, so first we'll take a look at a case where we've already installed a pulley using the standard just self-threading screws, but we want to add a backing plate. On this boat, in the stern here, we've got a hatch nearby, so we're not going to have to use any kind of special rigging bullet technique or anything like that to get the backing plate in place. We're just going to need to open these holes up. The holes were drilled for self-threading screws. We're going to open them up for clearance for machine screws. So I'm going to take the existing screws out. And this is really easy because we basically got the holes already there. They're already marked for us. It's just a matter of opening them up a little bit. One thing I do want to mention is if we take a look at this backing plate, there's 3 holes. And the reason for that is because if we did need to use a rigging bullet technique, and if you're not sure what that is, do a YouTube search for it. We would need to have 3 holes because you need 2 of them for the rigging bullet and you need 1 to get a screw started in. So, but even though we've got 3 holes here, because we're able to reach this, we're not going to drill all 3. There's no need to. The other thing you're going to notice is that it's marked right on the backing plate that these 2 holes are spaced for the clamp base and these 2 are spaced for the pulley. So that's going to tell us which orientation to put this thing inside the boat. But again, we've already got the holes started. So we're just going to open them up. I'm using a 13/64 drill bit. Just going to open those guys up a little bit. And that's going to give me clearance for a machine screw. Now I can take that first one. I'm going to reach inside the boat with my backing plate, the pulley from the outside. Grab a screwdriver here and get that one started. Once I feel it bite into the nylon locking nut, I'm going to go ahead and start the other one. I don't really want to tighten it up until I've got both screws started. Now I can go ahead and just tighten them on up. We've got a nice flat black backing plate on the inside of this boat. It's going to create essentially a watertight seal on the inside. We've got nylon locking nuts, which the threads are cutting, again, creating what's essentially a watertight seal. If you have a little bit of an irregular surface or if you have any concerns about leaking, of course you can always use silicone or marine goop or some kind of sealant. In this case, we're not using anything. We're just letting the backing plate do the sealing for us. Make sure she's nice and tight. That one's done. Okay, so here we are in the bow of the boat. We want to put this pulley all the way in the bow. We've got a hatch back here. It's going to be really difficult to reach the inside and the outside at the same time. So what we're going to do here is use what's known as the rigging bullet technique. After this video, if you still have questions about it, you can search it on YouTube and find a more in-depth rigging bullet install. But the other thing we're going to do here is rather than rigging bullets, which are going to cost about 15 bucks for a pair, We're going to show you how to do this with 1/8 inch bungee, which is, you know, pennies per foot. So first thing we're going to do is we've got to mark our holes, and we've got these lock nuts in the backing plate. The easiest way to do this, in my view, to make sure that everything lines up correctly, is to take the nuts out before drilling the holes. Of course, you can always try to hold the backing plate up and mark them, but it's a pretty deep distance there, and you'd have to have a pretty small pin, or you'd have to use a small drill bit and hope it doesn't move around while you mark the rest of them. So I'm going to show you my preferred install. You can do it any way you want. Basically, I'm just going to take one of the machine screws here, thread it into the lock nut, and usually you can kind of pop it out with your thumb. If it takes any more pressure than that, you can put it down on a firm surface and pop them out. I'm going to go ahead and knock all 3 lock nuts out. Just thread the screw into it and push it right out. Now the reason I did that is because the best way that I've found to install stuff on a kayak, you know, you've got this slick plastic piece and you've got this slick plastic boat, and things really want to kind of wiggle around. So what I found to be the best technique is to drill one hole, put the fastener in, that's going to lock the thing that you're trying to install in place, then drill the next hole, and so forth and so on. By knocking those lock nuts out, that now enables us to drop a fastener in without any interference. So let's go ahead and get this thing in place and drill some holes. Okay, before we start drilling any holes, the first thing we want to take a look at here on the back of the backing plate, it's marked clamp base and then pulley. And that's because these holes are spaced slightly different than these. The 2 over here on the right, they're going to line up with the holes in the pulley. The 2 over here on the left, they're going to line up with the clamp base. Of course, you can turn this thing either way you want. What we want is we want the pulley to the front, we want the 3rd screw to the back, and then that's going to line up just like this on the inside of the boat. So what we're going to do, we've already popped the nuts out here. With making sure that we've got the pulley part to the front of the boat, we're just going to put this in place about where we think we're going to want it, and then using the backing plate as a guide, I'm going to drill the first hole. Once I get that hole drilled, I'm going to go ahead and take one of the fasteners, use it to hold it in place. That'll keep it from sliding around. Now I'm going to drill the second hole. Again, using a fastener, drop it in place. I'm going to drill the 3rd hole. I'm just going to mention again here that even though the pulley only has 2 holes, the reason we're using 3 is because we're going to need to use 2 of those holes to bring the backing plate in using the 1/8 inch bungee, what we call the rigging bullet technique. And then we're going to need a 3rd hole available to start the screw in. So we'll see how that works here in a minute. Next thing we're going to do though, before we can actually install this, remember we popped those nuts out earlier. We're going to go ahead and press them back in. Doing this with a light thumb press. If they're a little tighter than that, you can always put them on a surface, kind of tap them in. The big thing is you want to make sure that the nylon locking part is to the outside, and that the part of the nut that has the clean threads on it goes to the inside, because that's where the screw is going to start into. We've got our holes drilled, we've got our pulley, we've got our backing plate. Let's get these 2 1/8 inch bungees in here and show you how to hook that up to pull this backing plate in place. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is take one of my 1/8 inch bungees, get the pulley oriented the way that I want it. I'm going to go ahead and put the bungee through the pulley, just let that hang there. And then I'm going to put this into the corresponding hole on the boat. Now, I'm going to go ahead and kind of angle this a little bit, because when this goes inside the boat, what I'm going to want to do is push the bungee in there, and I'm going to want it to feed down the boat towards an open hatch. And I'm just going to go ahead and feed in a couple of feet here. In this case, the hatch is only about 3 feet away. It's not going to be too difficult to reach. We can just reach inside there. If it were 8 or 10 feet or something like that, you could always reach inside with a coat hanger or something like that. But you're going to find a lot of installs. They're not super far out of reach. They're just a little bit out of reach. And that's when this technique using the 1/8 inch bungee works really well. So now I can just kind of reach inside the boat. There's the other end of my bungee. And I don't want the 2 bungees to cross crisscross inside the boat. So I'm gonna actually just kind of tie this up out of the way so that when I put the second one in, it doesn't crisscross. Here, I'll go through the second hole in the pulley. Again, right inside the boat. Gonna reach on the inside here. Pull that. So now I've got both bungees installed. I'm just gonna kind of tie a little knot here to keep this from pulling through the pulley. Loosen up my other one now that I've got that done. Tie me a little knot here. Just so I can pull these two, get them nice and snug. I'm gonna find out which is which. So here's the rear one. Here's the forward one. And then I'm just gonna look inside the boat, make sure they're not crossed. They look good. Double check that. And then what is corresponding on the backing plate, what is corresponding with the rear hole, I'm gonna go ahead and thread the bungee through the backing plate and tie a knot. Now I've got the backing plate connected to one of them. I can thread the other one, tie a knot. I've got it connected to the other one. Now by pulling these two strings, that's just gonna slide this backing plate right into place. Once I've got that, this third hole here is available. So I can just take my screw, grab my screwdriver here, and I can go ahead and start that one. And this is why we needed that third hole, because these two are both used for the bungees. You need a way to get one screw started to get this backing plate kind of held in place. Now I'm not going to tighten it up and make sure I leave it a little bit loose. So now that I've got that screw in place, I can get rid of this middle bungee. Just going to clip it. Kind of shove it inside the boat there. So now this hole is lined up by the screw. This hole is still lined up by the bungee, which means this middle hole here, by definition, has to be lined up. These pulleys are a little bit snug with the screw, but I just go ahead and get this guy started. Again, I don't want to tighten it up yet. I just want to get it started. Now we can get rid of the last bungee. I'll shove it inside the boat and start the last screw. Now that all three screws are started, I can tighten it up. Now we did drill one extra hole. We do have one extra fastener in there. But the beauty of that is if you look at what you've got a pan head screw. It's got a nice flat bottom on it. And you've got a nice flat slick surface on the boat. So when we tighten that screw up, it's gonna create a seal. There's no need for any kind of sealant as long as you didn't drill some giant oversized hole. You tighten this guy up and that's never gonna leak. Gonna tighten these two up nice and snug. And now we've got both pulleys installed with backing plates. Okay, for the sake of demonstration here, we're gonna install a backing plate, again, using the 1/8 inch bungees. We're gonna do it from the rear hatch. This Cuda does have a hatch in the center, which is a little bit closer, but we realize a lot of boats don't. So we want people to be able to do this whether their boat has a center hatch or not. So that's what we're gonna demonstrate. Once again, just like before, we're gonna take the backing plate, we're gonna pop out. This time only one of the nuts, and you'll see why here in a minute. It's gonna be that third one. We've got these two that are gonna line up with the clamp base, And then we've got this third one here. Actually, you know what? We'll go ahead and pop out 2 of them. That way we've got one to line up with those 2 existing holes. Once we do that, we can just remove the clamp base that has previously been installed with self-threading screws. And then using our 13/32 drill bit, 13/64 drill bit, we'll go ahead and drill these holes out. Those holes were already started for us. There was no need really to hold anything in place to mark them. But now we have to get the third hole. So what we're gonna do, make sure we've got our clamp base side lined up. That's very important. It's this third hole here, the extra one that we're gonna be drilling the hole for. Don't want to drill the wrong one and have the wrong spacing. And then with that in place, I'm just going to drill this hole. So now we've got all 3 holes. Now we can put in our bungee. Here's the clamp base. The bungee is going to go first into the hole all the way on this side. Now, it's another important thing to remember is that we do have scuppers in this boat. We don't want one of these to end up on one side of the scupper and the other one to end up on the other side of the scupper. So I've got one scupper here. It's pretty clear from there to the back of the boat. I'm just gonna make sure this thing's curved so that as I install it, we get on the right side of that scupper. And this is kind of a trial and error thing. Again, depending on the boat, you might have to reach up in there with a coat hanger or something like that. What I'm going to attempt to do here is get enough bungee inside the boat that it's kind of fed itself towards the back, and we'll see if we can reach it. Okay, so we couldn't quite reach that bungee. Got a piece of a fishing rod here. Just gonna reach inside here with that. Try to see what I can do to grab that little piece of bungee and snake it to the back. And there it is. So now we've got the first one. Again, we are gonna have to make sure that these things don't get crisscrossed. So I'm just gonna pull this thing up nice and tight and kind of tie it off to something just so that it's up out of the way as we install our second bungee. All right, so now we're gonna get a bungee in that second hole. Again, I'm gonna kind of put this thing at an angle so when it feeds into the boat, we miss that scupper that's down there. I also want it to be angled a little bit down because I don't want it to cross up with the one I've already got started. It's a little bit touchy here. You want to be kind of careful how you do this. But once I get it started, if I have it pointed in the right direction, it should kind of start to snake on back towards the rear of the boat. And if it doesn't, as long as I can reach with a hook or something and pull it back, that'll be fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it in there, keep a knot there so it doesn't accidentally get pulled all the way through. Again, take my little fishing rod in and see if I can get a hold of this thing. Almost got it there. Let's see if we can reach it. Not quite. Depending on the boat, depending on the circumstances, this can go really easy or it can be a little more frustrating. The key here is to be patient and persistent. And if you do those things, you will get it eventually. There we go. And there it is. So we've got both strings in here. I know this is the rear one. I know they're not crossed up. So I'm going to go ahead, while I've got that there, press the nuts back in. I know these two are going to have to line up with the clamp base hole pattern on the backing plate. So that means that this one here is going to go into the center hole. This one here is going to go into the front hole. So the one we just put in goes into the center hole. Put that through, tie a knot on the back. Now I can loosen up this one. You can see how important that was to keep this thing tight and out of the way. Kept us from getting things crisscrossed. So put this one through. Tie a knot. Now we're ready to pull this thing in place. Even before I just drop this in there, just to make sure it doesn't get twisted around, I'm gonna take all the slack out. And I just want this to kind of come right here in place. Once it's up there, I can kind of get a look inside the boat. I can see that that third hole is just about lined up. So I'll go ahead and grab my screw here. See if I can get that guy to line up the rest of the way. And there it is. We will cut this piece of bungee here, push that back inside the boat. And just like with the pulley, we've got this hole lined up, we've got this hole lined up, therefore this one must be pretty close. And that's all we're gonna do. Put the screw in, turn it. You may have to kind of wiggle things a little bit to get it started. What you can tell is once it starts into the nylon, you can feel it kind of snug a little bit, and that's how you know it's started. Then go ahead and cut that last one. Put that screw in. We're going to be careful not to push too hard. We don't want to dislodge the lock nuts from the backing plate. I've got that a little bit too tight. I had to loosen it up to give me some wiggle room here. We also want to be careful not to let it cross thread. Yep, feel that starting. Just going to go ahead and tighten that backing plate up against the inside of the boat. Now I can snug. Before I snug these up, actually, I probably want to get my line back in here. I've still got this loose enough that I've got a little bit of slack. I'm going to go ahead and get that trolley line through. Theoretically, you can thread it in, but it's a little bit tougher to do that. So if in a case like this, I'd rather install it, just kind of get a little bit of separation from the boat and install it underneath. There we go. And now we can snug it up. Actually, we can go ahead and tighten it up. We have a backing plate in there. We don't have to worry about stripping out any thread, so it's okay to tighten it up pretty good. There's no real need or advantage to going crazy, but we do want to make sure it's nice and tight. All right, now we've got a backing plate in the LeverLoc. All right, so there you have it. We've got a backing plate install on the LeverLoc anchor trolley. If you didn't catch it, make sure you catch the other install video that shows how to do the complete anchor trolley install. And if you have any questions about this video, or if you have any suggestions for comment you'd like to see in other videos, please put that in the comment section below. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. So thanks for watching. Tune in next time to Rigging the Dream.